Hey, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here and to present you today an update on current trends and also insights on the developments of our news media brands. It's actually a really long time since we were here as Axel Springer Audio and presented something to you. So before I start, just a sentence to myself. I'm Chrissy. I'm the head of audio at Axel Springer Audio, and we're mainly responsible for the business topics on podcasts within our national media brands. And so that I don't just tell you what's happened over the last 2 years, I've picked out 10 trends and will use them to show you what we've done with our news media brands over the last years. So let's start with trend number 1. The podcast market is growing, but quality prevails. What do I mean with that? I mean, we all know that there are podcasts everywhere. They have been popping up all over the place, especially during COVID. But even since then, the number of podcasts in Germany has continued to grow. So there are now more than 101,000 podcast shows in Germany. And that's really a lot, I would say. But only 27,000 of them are active. And active in this case means that the podcast has published a new episode in the last 4 weeks. Of course, I know this excludes actually completed storytelling podcasts, but in the end, it still shows that podcast and their quality, insistence, and also success prevail, because the number of the active podcasts is actually still similar over the past 2 years. So we see a growth in publishing new podcasts, but we don't see that much growth in active podcasts. So it shows also it's really hard to continue with that. And these podcasts, they receive or they make more than 1 million or 1,000 million monthly streams, and they have also over 9 million reviews already, which is really a lot. And how do we put the system into our podcast portfolio? As you can see, these are podcasts we have launched over the past 5 years, I would say, and a lot of them we just said. So we have said 2/3 of them. So I just make them blurry that you can see this. That means not every new podcast idea is a guarantee of success, which is totally not, absolutely not a shame, but rather a sign of strength, as we focus on our strengths and also on our success. And it's also a part of the process that some podcasts are successful and others are not. But we always try what is interesting out there. What can we do as our news media brand? So what are we focused on? And I think that's just a normal process. So trend number 2, podcasts are becoming part of the daily usage routine, and this means that creating user habits is one of our main goals, of course. So that's why we launched a daily trading podcast 3 years ago. We have also launched a Build News update in 2019, actually. And then we realized that this was becoming a part of our listeners' daily lives. So we made this to our focus and launched even more dailies or podcast day release episodes several times a week, so minimum 2. And that's, these 9 podcasts. One of them we just said also, I would say many of them are really doing well, and you can see the success of the formats now on the next slide, because I show you here our podcast reach over the last 4 years on a quarterly basis. So I divided the bars into the range of the daily podcast and also on the remaining podcasts. So what you can see here is that we now achieve 70% of our Axel Springer reach with podcast. They publish episodes several times a week, which is really a great success for us and also a proof that this is working for us. And again, that's the thing with the user habits. So if a person, as you asked us before, what is our favorite podcast? So you have a favorite podcast, and sometimes they have always Wednesday. So every Wednesday I'm listening to Kaulitz Hills because it's releasing in the morning. And if you have dailies or maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday episodes, then you know this. And in the morning, especially the short ones, you can listen while you're brushing your teeth or whatever. So that's something you can really good integrate in your morning routine, and good for us actually. Right, let's move on to trend number 3. So news and sports are 2 of the 3 largest podcast genres we have in Germany. Yeah, actually, that's funny because sport was always place 3 and now it's 2. It just changed this week. So last week it was placement 3. And yeah, but news and sports genres have been in the top 3 for years, now in the top 2. More than 400 million plays are generated by these 2 genres, which is really insane, I would say. And we are seeing extreme level of interest. And we are also contributing to this with our brands Bild and Welt. Of course, I mean, sports is really thankful for Bild. Football is a big topic, and also news and politics are 2 main topics for publishers. And actually, I would say it's a little advantage we have as a publisher because we know these categories really well. We have access to journalists, to the content already. So what we're doing here is we're providing our content not only to our readers, but also to our listeners. And yeah, so we have Machtwechsel was already mentioned. We have politics and news podcast shows also daily and weekly, and we have 4 football podcasts. They are really, yeah, really big ones in the trending charts on the platforms. Right, trend number 4 is not always on. So what I've already told you is the most podcasts we have are always on podcasts. So that means they're releasing weekly, daily, but they never stop. So they're not in seasons. They're really ongoing. But good storytelling attracts attention, actually. Yeah, I mean, we love good stories as a publisher, of course, but they usually cost a lot of more money, preparation, and also research. And in addition, they are often completed and therefore less relevant for the sales houses, as this always takes some time to get going. But nevertheless, we do these stories because they allow us, and especially our journalists, to generate attention and show what our brands can do, what they have for stories. And we are often rewarded. And for example, I just brought you to 3 examples. We were nominated for the German Podcast Award with Attentäter from Welt, but also with them, which is from the audio unit. Or we were named from Jan Böhmermann. I mean, everybody knows Fest und Flauschig with Macht und Millionen, which really shows peaks in the reach. You can imagine if a podcast like this podcast, names your podcast. Or we were praised at a major event like All Ears, which is the biggest podcast event in Germany we have, with Cash Burners, which what we launched last year in March before the All Ears. And yeah, what we see is through these storytelling podcasts, our brands can just show what stories we have to tell. And this is still important, but we won't focus on these topics that much because of course, we have to monetize our content. It's much more easier to monetize the content with always on podcasts. Yeah. Right. Trend number 5. It's discoverability and visibility on the platforms are a problem. What do I mean with that? It's really, really hard to launch a podcast and then to be on the platforms. So I really like this slide because it shows how important good networks and contacts are. It's a bit older. It's from 2022, when we have launched AHA, 10 Minuten Alltagswissen, which is a podcast show, 10 minutes, so as the title says. And it's 3 times a week, and it's about knowledge. So you have one question, one answer with an interview. And within the 3 months, you can see on the timeline, we received more than 10 free promotion placements on podcast platforms such Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Samsung. And we received with that more than 200,000 streams during this phase. And this is excluded the sustainable reach, because of course, if you have a promotion, people, they listen to your podcast and they continue listen to it, then it's always a consistent reach and users you have. And in the end, we were also named as a newcomer of the year by 2 of the biggest platforms. That was in December, so after launching in August, which is really great. And what I really like with that is that shows that people like to work with people and not always with the company, which doesn't mean that they don't want to like with Axel Springer at all. I mean, just I have a network with the partner managers of each platform, and if you're really good with them, they like you, you like them, you have a good connection to each other, then it's really much easier to push your content on its platforms than you having this connection actually. Yeah, and what we also can do for better discoverability shows the next trend, because it's podcast SEO, and it's a really big topic in this year for better discoverability on the platforms. And yeah, first of all, we try to implement the wording PPO and not SEO, because PPO stands for Podcast Platform Optimization, because if we optimize titles and descriptions, then we do it mainly actually for the podcast platforms. And and we started with that more than 1 year ago, January last year, and we have generated almost 2 million additional streams last year. So actually, it was really successful to do so, and we are glad that we started earlier than maybe other publishers or creators started. And here you see just a selection of the podcast where we have already optimized title or description. And we pay particular attention to the title, because users, they use the podcast platform, like you take Spotify and you put something in the search bar and you just write, okay, soccer, you want to have a soccer podcast. Then it's really important to have the word soccer also in the title. I mean, you don't have to put it on the cover. Let's take Stammplatz. Stammplatz is the naming. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's a cool name, but you don't know if it's soccer, is it whatever it is. So you don't have to put the name Fußball, like soccer, on the cover, but put it in the title. So we just added Fußball News täglich, because it's a daily. So soccer news daily, just in the title for the meta, just for the search. And since then, we're ranking really, really high. So people, they're looking for soccer podcasts, they will find us. And hopefully listen also to our podcast. And I think we are already a little ahead of the competition here right now. So hopefully can use this for us. Yeah. Right. Trend number 7. People trust the voice, but the face on the cover attracts even more. So what do I mean with that is, you all can remember when you have listened to your first podcast, maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you saw faces, but not that much actually. And because you always thought it's audio, so why should I put my face on the cover? But now, I think it's a statistic from 2022, 56% of the hosts, they put their photo or a photograph of itself on the cover. And I mean, if you look around on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, you notice that there is really, really a big number of podcasts with the host on the podcast cover. So I think it's a good way to be picked, because if you don't know what to listen and you're just looking, take the example we just had before, you put soccer in there and then you want to listen to a soccer podcast. Maybe you decide for the title, but maybe you decide also for the faces, what you see, and it's much more, convenient, or it's I don't know, you just be pursued when you just see the person who's speaking, and then you just click on, if you like it, then it's even better. Or if you're a person and your face is famous because you have already a community on Instagram, or social media, whatever, then they should just recognize that you are the person who's owning this podcast. And again, it shows a little bit what I said about distribution. So people follow people. So if you're talking to a person, but you also follow people because you like the person, and the face on the cover can be definitely an advantage for us. And we just focus on that even more. Here are a few 4 examples where we have faces on the cover, and we try to update this also this year with other podcasts we have. It just makes sense if you not more than 2 or 3 people. Otherwise, it can be too much on the cover. But yeah, and also for knowledge things like AHA or Alles auf Aktien, it really doesn't matter if the person is on the cover because they really listen for the news and for what they want to know, for the knowledge. But yeah, I mean, Ronsheimer is a good example. Of course, you should put his face on the cover. Yeah. And now we're coming to trend number 8. Video podcasts are on the rise and increase reach. I mean, we see the opportunities and the difficulties at the same time. I personally love video podcasts, and I just typed also in Call Her Daddy, which is one of the biggest podcast shows in the US. And I really, really enjoy watching Alex Cooper's Call Her Daddy on the screen. I don't know why, but it's just interesting to see how they talk to each other, which is, I don't know if it's stupid, but it really focused me on the screen. But for us as news media brands, this often comes with additional post-production costs because we don't have that much or that many podcasts where we just talk and we don't have cuts and post-production. So we at Team Audio, we see the current market developments, of course, and we see reasons that make us think more about video. And one of the reasons is definitely are definitely the platforms. I mean, Spotify is really pushing the topic enormously. If you host on Megaphone, which is their own hosting solution, then you can upload MP4. And this is an example which what we've done with Defner and Schäpitz with the Friday video TV show. Actually, we put it on Megaphone. You see it on the screen on the right-hand side. And then you just see the video on Spotify, but on Apple and all the other platforms, you just would listen to the MP3, so just audio. Yeah. So platforms are a reason. YouTube, of course. I mean, YouTube is the second largest search engine. And of course, that's why it's the most relevant distribution platform also out there, because people just type in, as I mentioned, soccer, FC Bayern München, whatever they want to see. And if you have your podcast there, you might be founded there. But however, sales for podcasts, especially on YouTube, is not yet fully developed here because you just can monetize with the existing YouTube monetization system, but you can't put normally you have an RSS feed and you put the advertisement in the RSS feed and they sort it out, so they take it, and you can't monetize the reach you have on YouTube, which is not that cool. Yeah, so that's a problem in my view. And the second reason why it can be really interested is, of course, the target groups, because I think we can be able to convince completely new users to listen to our content, and we possibly could increase the loyalty of existing listeners if you have a video because you're more into it, you see them, you like to see them and not listen to them. So yeah, I would say we see the opportunities, but also the risk, such IAB certification and monetization. But I'm pretty sure that Chris can solve some of the problems I mentioned with heyLisa. So I'm happy to hand over to you. So,
hopefully, thank you. I will try to just share my screen.
Yeah,
quickly,
I
so you also
finished that.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you. So as you mentioned, video is complicated, and I've been editing video for over 10 years, and I just had enough at one point. And I wanted to create something where video could be edited a lot easier. So let me know if you see, it might be familiar to some people. This is what traditional video editors look like. We wanted to create something much simpler, something much easier to use, and something possibly much faster to create videos, such as podcast videos. And we started specifically focusing on podcasts just because it works for our editor, basically. And when you talk about a podcast, obviously, it's usually two people talking. But what's as you mentioned, a trend coming up now is video, and not just only because of monetization and because Spotify or YouTube, but I think it's a lot better for discoverability, and more people discover podcasts not necessarily on traditional podcast platforms, but more on Instagram, TikTok, and even YouTube Shorts, if you have seen YouTube Shorts around. What we created is, as I mentioned, a very simple flow to edit videos. Here is a podcast segment. I could upload, any length of podcast here. I already cropped out this half-a-minute episode. And what I can do here is just tell Lisa, who already welcomed me in the chat box here, I can tell her that maybe I want a mobile optimized version of this video. So hopefully in a couple of seconds, she will edit the video for me. That is going to be mobile oriented. After that, I can give her other instructions like zooming on the speaker, which is obviously useful in case of a podcast. If I have the speaker in the middle of the screen, of course, I get an error message. Let's see if she will still add captions to my video. This takes a couple of seconds, but obviously it's very important that you have the text on the screen, because on mobile, especially, a lot of people listen to the video without sound, just go on mute and they just read the text that's on the screen. So as you see, I have different captioning styles that I can add to the video. You find a longer segment, perfect. So I can just tell Lisa, for example, here I would like to make the captions a little bit bigger, and then she should understand me. I should be able to increase the size just like that. Perfect. Then I can go over the text, and I can also edit the video based on the text. As you know, on social media, you might be able to just, basic things. I cut out the filler words from the video, so you will see the video will be hopefully reduced by a couple of seconds. Then next I can go and highlight words, so it will look even better on social media, and it will be almost ready to be posted. I can go ahead and ask Lisa to make recommendations for the hook of the video. I can also ask her if I have a longer video segment, just to select the interesting parts from the video. So we try to really make the process of editing video as simple as possible and as much AI as human. So you are able to reflect on the video and give her feedback, and not just, upload the video and then the AI does everything, but really we want the human in the loop to influence how the final video will look. Another thing I wanted to emphasize is that we also have audio only video editor. So in this case, you just upload the audio in MP3 format. We will similarly transcribe. You will be able to upload an image and also add little animation, so it even looks better on social media. I wanted to really just do a very quick presentation. I think we will have questions at the end, but I will get back to work now.
Thank you. So I share my screen again. Okay. Just finished here. Okay. Then we continue with the last two trends before we start with questions. So trend number 9, advertising is gaining relevance. I mean, it's actually more than just gaining relevance. It is relevant. And I brought you this number. It's $35 billion US. That's the audio ad spendings worldwide last year. I mean, it's audio all over, so including radio, but just wanted to show you that the market is really big. And with podcasts, we definitely want like the part of the cake. And yeah, and on the next slide, you see the US market podcast ad revenues. So the ad revenues posted strong growth in 2022. So $1.8 billion was the market in 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago. And that shows, I mean, it's small compared to the whole audio market, but still it's a growing and increasing market. So we will get more and more ad spendings from the big cake, and just wanted to show that the cake we can have is really big, and not only our podcast is such a small market. No, it's not. There's many potential. And yeah, if you're interested in how we monetize our podcast portfolio, maybe we have time for questions in the end. So we are working with 7-One Audio, started last year in January, so 2023. Before we had Media Impact as our marketing solution, but yeah, we are like a digital marketing house, and 7-One Audio, like the name says, is only audio sales, and which is really necessary to monetize podcast properly, and really in an environment with customers. They're really interested in buying ads in podcasts. So we have our whole portfolio with Welt and Bild at 7-One Audio, and are really happy with them, right? And also continued this relationship with them this year. And so maybe we have time for questions to that. And the last trend I just brought is also monetization. It's subscription. So paid content and subscriptions are becoming increasingly attractive, especially for publishers. So especially for publishers, I would say, because they mostly have already an existing subscription model. So at Welt, at Bild, at Business Insider, we have subscription models, and we want to increase these numbers, or we want to focus on users, that they have not only things to read, also to listen. And before I go into this partnership with Welt and Apple, I have also 2 numbers. I think they're really interesting because it's a high number of audio subscribers. So Media Pioneer, which is also an Axel Springer shareholding, they have 50,000 paying subscriber, and that's also for audio. So it's a really impressive number, and shows there are people they are willing to pay for audio and paid audio. And Zetland, which is the Danish company or publisher, they have 40,000 paying subscribers. So I mean, Denmark is really like a small country. So there are people they are willing to pay, and that's something we also saw. And Apple Podcasts asked us last year if we want to partner with them. And I mean, they actually asked us 3 years ago, but there it wasn't working, because we said, okay, we won't offer a new subscription, an audio-only subscription. We definitely need to integrate it in our existing subscription model. So last year they had the technical solution, and we were the first German partner who partnered with them on an international release last year in September, October. And now we can have a connection between our existing Welt Plus subscription and the content, the bonus content on Apple Podcast. So if you have an Welt Plus subscription on Apple, on your iPhone, and you paid with Apple payment, like Apple Pay, then you have already directly the connection. If you have your subscription of Welt on Welt.de, like in the browser, then it's not working yet. We are working on it because it's a really technical issue on the CMS side, but also on the side of Apple. But you can listen to all the premium content on Welt.de, of course, and also on the Welt.de application. But for us, it's a really good chance to have a lot of promotions on Apple Podcasts with our content, actually. So that was one of the first or the main reasons why we did this partnership, but also to test how is bonus content and bonus episodes converting. And it works really well for us, and also for the users. We put there in Alles auf Aktien and Aha Wissen, which are the 2 biggest podcasts we have with Welt, and the biggest reach we have, or the biggest unique user we have. And they're really interested in the bonus episodes, and they're really converting into a subscription to listen to that. So it's really really good, and I'm positive that we will have, or we will do more there in the next 2 years, and this can be in an other monetization way. But still, at the moment, we are focusing on monetization with ads, so generating reach. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chrissy, and also to Chris. I see a lot of clapping hands coming up here in case you can't see it. So, are there questions for Chrissy and for Chris?
Good couple today.
Yeah, I wanted to say. Garrett is raising his hand.
Yes, hello. I think we don't know each other yet. I'm working in corporate communications, and I am leading the project On the Record podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my question is just out of curiosity, how you see this trend. Spotify is, or recently was publicizing a popular podcast or two popular podcasts originally in English and then translating it via AI in Spanish. Do you think this is coming anywhere soon? Because that would be a solution I would be really waiting for. What do you think about that?
I can take this question. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and we are thinking about this topic as well. So we were thinking about 10 Minuten Alltagswissen, because yeah, it's just general knowledge. So why shouldn't we try and translating it into Spanish or English? So we're not launching something, but we definitely think about it, and also with some other podcasts we do with WakeWord. WakeWord is a production company from Axel Springer, where we have a majority shareholding thing. And there we have also, like, I would say general content. It has to be content which is also interesting for the Spanish or the English-speaking countries, because if you just, I don't know, I mean, okay, soccer could be also, because FC Bayern München is also big in other countries, but if it's too small and too local, I would say it doesn't just make sense to translate it, because people, they would live somewhere else, they might still speak German and would listen to the podcast they're really interested in. So, but yeah, I think it can be something and can be really interesting. And the AI is really good. I mean, it sounds really good. I mean, I'm not Spanish native, so I can't say if it's right, but it sounds really good. Also, the tonality of the original voice, really good in the Spanish and English ones. Yeah.
And what technical solution would you like use for that? Do you have any recommendation?
I think we tried it with 11 Labs.
11 Labs.
Yeah, I think we used 11 Labs.
I will have a look at that.
Perfect. Are there more questions or comments? Get it?
Yes, I have another question.
Thank you.
Chris, you were talking about SEO and the podcast. This is also something I was already thinking about a lot. My problem is a bit that as you maybe know on the record, the title renaming thing. We are having the problem that we're having the topic, that we're having the brand, and that we're having also the name and maybe also the title of that person, which all has to fit within the first 80 characters. So it is seen at Spotify and Apple Podcasts the best way. Yeah, and it doesn't work because it's always longer. So what should I concentrate on, or what do you think is most important?
I actually didn't know that we want to, I mean, I know we publish it on all the platforms. I didn't know that we want to really make it big on the platform for the world out there. Then I would say, yeah, it should be the content, because I mean, we are here in our world. I mean, we know the persons, but out there nobody knows the person who is speaking there. I mean, we think always, yeah, but no. I mean, Julian Reichelt, baby, yeah. Yeah, but that's the same with podcasts. So if someone says, I want to have a podcast because I'm a big journalist, then he is or she is, but only in our world, because we are more in the media bubble. But if I ask my father, he would say, who? And I think that can be sometimes a problem. So I wouldn't go out with the name, because nobody would know the name. So, and if you're in the company and really interested in the name and what he or she talks about, then you would definitely know about the podcast before. Yeah.
Thumbs up. Great. So think we are some people here in the room. Are there more questions? Lars.
Hi, Chrissy.
Hi.
Good to see you. I'm interested on how the money is going from the publisher to the sales house to the platforms. Like, what are the different? I mean, you do not need to have to disclaim the take rates, but who is taking a piece of the cake in the value chain?
Yeah. So the platforms, they don't take money at the moment. Hopefully it stays like this. So at the moment it's our content. We host the content at CMS, an audio CMS, and there we also have the ad breaks. So we implement the ad breaks because there is a connection between ad server and CMS. So as we know it from our websites, and we have only the share to the 7-1 Audio. So they are the sales house. They selling our audio ads, but we implement the audio ads. So we say where the audio ad is, but they creating the audio ads, implementing this in the ad server, and then just stitching the ad. And all these slots we don't sell, which is a lot actually. So we have fill rates around 30% or something, so not 100%. And we try to fill with cross promotions at the moment because we have a big reach. We have many podcasts within the news media brands. So yeah, especially the post roads, they are not interested or they're not interesting for agencies and advertisers. So yeah, but there's nobody else except with the if we would have audio subscriptions on Apple Podcasts, then it's the same share as Apple always take. I think it's 30%. What we have with Macht een Million, for example, because Macht een Million has a single subscription on Apple Podcast.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Great, thank you. So
I have a question for Chris. So looking at the video podcasting, what kind of use cases do you see? So you said it's like using snippets on social media, which is for advertising the podcast. Are there any other use cases where heyLisa is concentrating on?
So that's a current focus. That's something that also we can automate. So you upload basically, 30 minutes of podcast, and we select the best clips that will perform best on social media. The use case is really not advertising as such. It's really just to, build a following and build a constant content flow that you can publish basically every day, one short snippet from the podcast. And the good thing about it is that on Instagram and in YouTube and also TikTok, the algorithm will find potential new listeners to the podcast. So it will actually drive discoverability and traffic to the longer version of the podcast. So that's the real benefit that we see with this use case. Other than that, we're also working on long form video editing content with all kinds of AI integrations and solutions inside Lisa. So if you want to clean the audio, for example, because some people do podcast recording in Zoom and different other video call platforms, Microsoft Teams, and so on. So you can, or you're better off if you clean the audio before even publishing it. And that, for example, we can do within the app, but there will be other things like that are specific for video editing. So adding new backgrounds, adding animations, other than just, text and audio.
Super, thank you. And if anyone here in the call wants to know more about heyLisa, because it's one of our startups here in our portfolio, so then I think Chris is also, after this call, happy to receive your questions, just to mention that. That's and there we have a raised hand from Wojciech.
Hey, I have a question to Kristin. I mean, which podcast distribution platform are you using? You're using Megaphone, Anchor, or something different?
No, we're using Podigy, which is the German player in the market. So for 99% of all our podcasts, we're using Podigy. But we do have a test with the video of Defner and Chapitz on the the Friday episode, I would say, the Friday TV show we use as an episode on Megaphone, because it's the only platform where we can have an MP4 distributed on Spotify. And also we have a test with one of our BI, Business Insider Germany podcast on Megaphone, actually just to want to see if they really promote us more when we use their solution.
Okay. I was curious that you are using Anchor, for example, because I tried to upload MP4 to Spotify via Anchor, but the problem was that I could only use one podcast per one account. So in the moment when you have a lot of podcasts, there is a problem to publishing it.
I
via
think Anchor is
MP4
actually the
to Spotify.
B2C solution. So
Maybe.
so Anchor and Megaphone, they are both from Spotify, and Anchor is the B2C solution in my view, and Megaphone is the B2B solution. So that can be that Anchor just allows you to upload for one podcast because it is B2C, and I don't know, do you have to pay more to have more podcasts or something? That makes sense, yeah. Then I wouldn't use Anchor.
Okay, and about monetization, in this platform about which you are talking about, there is a possibility to put advertisement, include the MP3, like after 5 minutes you have advertisement. There is a possible on this platform?
Yeah. I mean, actually, every hosting platform should have an integrated ad server right now. So, I mean, it's 2024. Yeah, they should have this. And you don't need to have a sales house like we're working on, but we have a big portfolio, so it just makes sense for us. But for example, Podigy, they have an own ad server right now. So you can, if you have a specific size reach per podcast, you can just tick advertisement and just put ad slots in there, and then they can automatically sell your podcast. That's really easy for like a free creator, not a publisher house like we are. And also Acast is the other big solution. They are working all over Europe and US. They have also monetization included in the hosting solution. Megaphone, they have Spotify Audience Network, but there's mostly solutions. They are more for companies, like they are more for B2B than instead of B2C.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome.